Grant Writers, Rebecca Tuttle here, founder and principal of Grant Right Now and Grant Writing for Good. We help schools, nonprofits, organizations, and businesses find, write, and secure grant funding, and we teach you how to do it. Welcome to Grant Right Now Live. Today, we're going to be talking with Brendan D. Colbert, an East Hartford community leader who has spent the last 10 years inspiring people to become the best versions of themselves they can possibly be. Founder and CEO of the Colbert Group, he specializes in life coaching, multimedia projects, and philanthropy. Brendan believes that once we all realize our gift to the world, basic human compassion for all becomes all the more attainable. What a great topic to dive into today. I'm so excited to welcome you to the show, Brendan. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So today I understand that you're going to talk to us about inspirational coaching, multimedia projects, and how all that kind of ties into philanthropy.
Yes, absolutely. It's all under the same umbrella, all within the same bubble.
That's fantastic. I can't wait to hear your words of wisdom for using social media. How to build an authentic and engaging audience is something that a lot of social media users struggle with.
Yeah, I was one of them. I didn't get down with the social media bug until late in the game, and both from a personal level and a professional level, I see the benefit of social media and how it doesn't have to be a us against them mentality when it comes to grassroots connections, philanthropy, and social engagement. Everybody can kind of win and eat together. So yes, this is definitely a topic that I have so much to say about because I've been on both sides of the aisle.
That's great. So tell us a little bit about your group, your Colbert Group.
So the Colbert Group is actually a rebrand. So since 2018, I started what was known as the Colbert Foundation, where we specialized in what I called self-esteem and self-confidence retention through inspirational speaking, multimedia projects, and philanthropy. It sounds extremely familiar to the fundamentals of the Colbert Group. And I did well. We did very successful. I had a team of about 6 interns throughout those 2.5 years. And the motivational speaking aspect of it, I've been doing since 2010. So for about 10 years or so. But with this pandemic, I really took a seat back and decided, hey, I know what my brand is. I know the foundations of my brand. I know ultimately what I want to do with this brand, but something is not clicking with myself. It has nothing to do with consumers. It had nothing to do with supporters in the community because the support was very high. But it came to a point in my life and my career, and you can call it a pandemic. The pandemic, the ongoing pandemic, it essentially gave us an opportunity to be still and see exactly what it is that we want to do. So we rebranded, and we know that self-esteem, self-confidence, inspiration, motivation, all of these words we can use. We know exactly that that's the finish line for most of us. But I had to sit back and say, hey, Brendan, what is your end game? So we rebranded to the Colbert Group because we can take it so many different directions in a good way. Oftentimes when people say, oh, you're going one direction, you're going another direction, it comes with a lot of apprehension. It comes with a false sense that you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you want this to be. If you talk to a lot of your mentors, they will say, well, first you got to figure out what it is. First, you have to figure out what it is, and then everything comes next. And I believe that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I feel completely confident in this move, in this rebrand, because I know that self-esteem, self-confidence, motivation, inspiration is the foundation for my life's work. So we're going to go ahead and continue to do that.
That's great. Wow. That's a great message to wake up to, too. I love it.
Thank
Now,
you.
today's show, you're absolutely welcome. Today's show is pretty unique, and it's about engaging authentic audiences of donors, of volunteers, community members, even philanthropists. So, how are you combining all of these members of the community in your social media messaging?
So the core of that all is understanding and identifying that all of the different groups of people that you just named can come from any race, religion, creed, and social economic status. That's the most important one. I don't come from money. I don't have any money, but I do have a drive in me to want to help people and more so want to help people help themselves because there's a foundation that we have here at the Colbert Group and as it pertains to philanthropy, and we believe that anybody can be a philanthropist. It doesn't matter what your tax bracket is. Now, you know, are wealthier people typically philanthropists? Yes, because they have a lot of funds and money and resources that they can give to others and within the community. It doesn't hurt their bottom line. But I was speaking at a school one day, elementary school, and I said, "Hey, raise your hand if you know what a philanthropist is." A lot of them didn't raise their hand. Back then, I wouldn't have been able to raise my hand either. But then I said, "Hey, raise your hand if you have ever given one of your peers, one of your friends, 25 cents to go to the school store and get an eraser," or maybe I'm dating myself, but that's what they used to sell in the school store.
Hey, it was milk when I was a kid. It was a quarter.
A lot of them raised their hand and said, "Oh yeah. Congratulations, you are a philanthropist." And
That's a great analogy.
right, and I feel that if we can adapt that mentality, that helping people doesn't mean that they are less than or they didn't work hard enough or they're just non-deserving. We can elevate ourselves to another level, and social media is the premise for all of that. Organizations have been doing that for years. GoFundMe, all of the other grassroots, the huge ones that we know, that's what it is. How many times have you opened an email for PayPal or GoFundMe and it says, "Hey, if you give $5 here, it can help somebody across the world." You're a philanthropist if you participate in that. You're also a philanthropist, or you have a philanthropic ideology if you forwarded that email to one of your colleagues or forwarded that email to a family member, say, "Hey, I can't right now, but look at this opportunity to help somebody." It may not be social media in the traditional form, but it is digital marketing. It is an email campaign, so on and so forth. So I say, what does it matter that we may have a high or a low tax bracket? We can all be a part of this.
We can all give, absolutely. Yep. And I love these analogies. If people realize that just giving even the quarter analogy as a child or passing along an annual campaign appeal letter to someone else, a friend or a neighbor, I think that gives people more incentive to want to help out because it helps them understand that they have a part in this and they're not just cutting a check or giving a donation, but really they're making a difference. And that's one of the hardest things, I think, and I'd be interested to hear what you think about this, Brendan, but that's one of the hardest things for nonprofits to articulate back to their donors is how is your gift making a difference? And I think that's when storytelling started to come into play, but connecting people to the cause and the gift itself is so important. So what are your thoughts there?
I agree 100%. I gave my first scholarship out when I was 24 years old. That same year, I had been evicted from my apartment. I was going through a real rough time at that point in my life. I still gave the scholarship because the purpose of it and the intent outweighed my current circumstance. You have to now. in no way am I saying, hey, give all you got until you have nothing. No, I was in a position to do it. I had moved things around, so on and so forth. But, you know, I understood that the fundamental reason why I created that scholarship over 6 years ago outweighed my current circumstance. And once you realize that your circumstances, it doesn't determine how relevant you are as a person. I want to make people feel special and feel like they're a gift to the world after they got evicted, after they got out of a bad relationship, after they unwillingly got out of a bad relationship, after they lost a job. All of these things, and it's not that we're dwelling in negativity or using negativity to fuel our ambitions, because I think that's toxic as well, and you know that's another episode. But we romanticize pain a little bit more than we should. But if you can isolate that feeling, that gift that you are, everything will work out. And to your point, I was one of those people. There are no videos, there are no pictures, there's no testimonials to any of these things that I did back then, because I was so worried that, hey, no, I'm a community organization. Only the big bad for-profit organizations plaster people on social media and say, hey, I gave that, hey, I gave this. A good friend of mine, Juan Morales of J Films, he told me, you know, you're doing all these good things, these turkey drives, but nobody knows about them.
Right, nobody knows about it. And I've heard that so many times.
Yeah.
Just put it out there, let people know. People want to celebrate. They're waiting for good news.
I started taking pictures and videos back in 2016, 2017, when I was doing my 100 turkeys for 100 families. And I found a healthy medium. I obviously didn't take any pictures of the families that needed a turkey, but I would video record myself in Stop and Shop getting the turkeys, or take a picture of my trunk with the turkeys full, and so on and so forth. But next year, when we bring back the 100 Turkeys for 100 Families campaign, we are going to invest money into social media marketing and really let people know Brendan Colbert, the man, is not fueling this. It's my desire to give or not really give, to remind everybody that they are entitled to their slice of basic human compassion. It's never been about the turkey. And I always say that because philanthropy is more about the impact than it is about the financial aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the same rings true with grants. And I say the same thing. If you're coming at it for the money, then you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. You're fine. And it's like, never, ever in a million years would anybody recommend, hey, Brendan, I know you just lost your apartment. You know, I know you had to borrow money to get your suit dry cleaned for this gala, but you know, go ahead and give a $500 scholarship to a stranger. To this day, I don't know what my mentality was back then, and it would cause a person to do that, but I don't regret it. I don't regret it. And the way I'm able to tell this story 6 years later, I wasn't in that mind frame back in 2014. I just did it. I just did it. And I was always so afraid. And I think a lot of nonprofits have this same fear, that they don't want to be labeled as the man. They don't want to be labeled as, oh, you know, we're just doing this for the publicity, you know, so on and so forth. And the thing we all hear, everybody watching, and you've heard this a million times, they're just going to write it off anyway. Well, should you also not get married? Because when you get married, yes, there's tax incentives for that. Should you also, should I not save my receipt for the box of paper I bought for my printer? You know, and it's, you can't be, and I'm saying all this because I was on both sides of the aisle. You cannot be afraid of the unknown.
I like that. I'm going to write that down.
You can't. And that's something I struggle with to this day. Anxiety comes in many forms. Think about it. You've worked with a plethora of not only nonprofits, but individuals who are maybe board members or executive directors, so on and so forth. And I can guarantee you a lot of them, including myself, there's this fear that if I take this money or go this route that's not traditionally nonprofit based, then the core and the foundation and the mission and the vision statement that I promised my donors or I promised my board will get depleted. And I'll just be like every other business. It's not true. A lot of people have a fear of registering their business nonprofit or some sort of for-profit business, not because of the domain name that they buy, not because of the business structure. It's because of perception. There are nonprofits, to speak to the title of our show, there are nonprofit leaders who don't even use social media because they mentally attach it to immaturity. They mentally attach it to the reason why they may have to discipline some of their workers for being on their cell phone, being on Instagram, and so on and so forth. There's such a bad taste in the mouths of so many leaders because they're like, we're a serious business. We don't need social media. We have our donors that we can call. Okay,
interesting point about that is a lot of times that pushback comes from fear of not knowing how. And you're saying you can't be afraid of that unknown. But I think there are so many opportunities out there to learn, and you just have to have the confidence.
Yeah.
The confidence gives you the initiative and the motivation you need to go out and learn what you don't know, to then be confident to apply it. That's the way I look at it, because whenever I'm trying something new and I'm out there, it's really scary sometimes, being out there. Whenever I try something new, I try to learn as much as I can about it before I put myself out there. So I think a lot of that hesitation might also come with the fear that you're speaking about.
Yeah, fear is dangerous. Fear is something that can move mountains or cause mountains to never move. I know everything about fear. And when I say I know everything about fear, that doesn't necessarily mean I have the remedy to cure fear, or I can teach you how to get over your fear. The things that I grew up around and grew up with are still dealing with the foundation and fundamental of that is fear. I opened up this show talking about how the Covert Group was a rebrand of the Covert Foundation. But, if we're talking about fear, it wasn't until my fiance, Brittany Johnson, pushed me to get over my fear to rebrand. Because there was a point at the beginning of this pandemic, and some of that is, the fact that there's a global pandemic and a lot of it affected our mental health, which needs to be talked about. But another aspect of it was, I felt like I wasn't reaching, not the number of people, but I wasn't reaching that goal that I had sought out to do. There were certain aspects of my organization that were supposed to be very minor and just more of a fun aspect of it that ended up being the top in the tier of it. And that started to make me feel like I was moving away from my mission and my goal. And social media had a big part in that. As I mentioned, multimedia projects is a part of my, the fundamentals of the organization. But I'm a motivational speaker first. I'm a certified life coach first. And what ended up happening.
Can you tell us, and I'm sorry to cut you off, you're just giving us so much, and I want to ask you some questions because it's so interesting. Tell us about the inspirational coaching, because there's a lot of people out there who say, just as you had about you're a life coach, but you were very intentional about talking about how you are an inspirational life coach. So can we touch on that a little?
Absolutely. A good friend and a mentor of mine, Elijah Oliver, told me when we were at Cracker Barrel about 8 years ago, he said, be careful when you don't know the difference between a motivator and an inspirer. I can motivate you to do a lot. I have dedicated my entire adult life to be good with words, articulate. Um, Me and the dictionary and me and the thesaurus have a pretty good relationship. And I'm a reader and I'm books and so on and so forth. However, the credit, for lack of better words, should never go to me. I can motivate. You're motivated by your parents to do your chores because you are afraid of what happens if you don't do it. You can be inspired by your parents to do your chores because you see how hard they work and they work 12 hours a day, and you are then inspired to do your chores because it takes a little bit of weight off of them. So when I say I'm an inspirational life coach, it's because all I'm doing, or all I plan to do, is inspire you to go whatever route you want to go. When I was getting my certification, they made it abundantly clear that you have to know the difference between a client needing your services as a life coach versus needing a licensed counselor.
Right.
And that's extremely important when it comes to social media, when it comes to our professions, when it comes to a lot of these things, because as an inspirational life coach, you do more of the talking than we do, or we should do, because I cannot be your inspiration. And we've heard it forever. You inspired me. We understand the definition of that phrase, and I believe the definition of the phrase and the fundamentals of the words are two different things. However, I find inspiration in moments. I find inspiration in characteristics, in ideals, in fundamentals and foundations. I've been inspired by 90-year-old individuals, but I've also been inspired by 5-year-old individuals. You know, I've been around when I used to work for the YMCA. I've been around, school age kids who will come up to me and say, "Well, Mr. Brendan, why aren't people nicer to people? Why are people being mean to people because of how they look?" And I'm just like, "Oh, I gotta go right." That child, that moment inspired me. The circumstance in which that child pulled that motivation from didn't do the trick for me because I'm not in their world. I'm not a 5-year-old. Seeing somebody being mean to somebody, yeah, we don't like it. Everybody hates bullies, but it was the moment that inspired me. So in my life coaching practice, whenever the world opens up again, that's what I want to do. I want to inspire each and every one of my clients, groups, participants, community partners to be an inspiration to the world, because it was billions of you trying to be you at the moment you were born or the moment you were conceived. There has never been a moment in your life where you have been against those odds, and never will be. So your life is intentional, and your life holds a place in this short life for a reason. Nobody thinks, hey, this tree is 300 years old. I wonder what that tree went through 250 years ago. Nobody thinks about that because, unfortunately and fortunately at the same time, death gives time all of its value. And that's why we do what we do.
That's great. You're saying that you are a gift to the world. So you're a gift to the world. What are you going to do for the world with that gift?
Right.
The gift of who you are. And I've been reading a lot during this pandemic. I try to read anyway. I love to read. I love books. But I've been trying to read a lot because if you go outside your doorstep, sometimes it's really hard to make sense of the world.
Yeah.
And there was always some level of chaos, but I just feel as though everyone is really spinning right now, and there isn't much direction, and that can be very isolating for people. And to your point about, the whole topic of the show today is how to use social media and media intentionally to share your message and your gift. If you are in this spiral and you're on social and people are spiraling there, where do you draw that positivity, that inspiration from? I think it's talking to people like you, right? Listening to your message and following your work. And and believing what you say, that, wow, I never thought I was a giver of someone else, a philanthropist, just by doing X, Y, and Z. That lifts people's spirits, that lifts them up. And I think if we had more people like you to share this message and this inspiration, then I think that we wouldn't be spinning so much. So I am so grateful that you came on to our show today to talk about some of these things. Now, you use multimedia to engage the community. For those who may be intimidated by video or social media, what's your advice for people getting started? And then what are some best practices through that initial orientation period?
Okay, so getting started is the hardest part. There's a myth out there that your followers, subscribers, friends on social media measure your relevance or serve as the volume for how impactful you can be. That's a lie. It's not true at all. You need to identify what sort of impact you want to have, and then you take it from there. If you're a nonprofit leader and you have interns or you have staff who are pretty familiar, hold a focus group. People love to be asked their opinion on things. And once a little trick that I used to do, once I saw how receptive people were to being asked their opinion, started doing it on social media. I made a documentary years ago, about 4 years ago, and I was laying in bed in my apartment, and I said to myself, maybe I can do that. I don't know how to. I'm not a filmmaker. Well, I didn't think I was a filmmaker, and I jumped on Facebook and I said, if I made a documentary about self-esteem, would you guys be interested? Comments were blown up. DMs were blown up. Absolutely. And I'm not a filmer. I never pretended to be a filmer. I researched on YouTube what equipment to buy, and I filmed it with my iPad. I traveled to 3 states to do my thing, but I was getting support from individuals in California, in France, in Africa. They were like, how can we see it in Nigeria? And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And that was the same year I got on. I've only been on social media 4 years, by the way, guys. I'm telling you, don't get confused about my age. I was anti-social media. It wasn't until 2016, Memorial Day 2016, that I was like, let me get a Facebook. I called my little sister. Hey, how do I sign up for the Facebook? I was one of those. And just getting that support. In a year, I hit the maximum friends you can have on Facebook. I hit 5,000 friends on Facebook. It was mainly because of the multimedia aspect. I used to be affiliated with the show, and we would work the Greater Hartford Festival of Jazz every year. And all I was doing was going around talking to people, asking them how they felt about jazz and the festival. And hey, how do I see this video? Hey, here's my social media. But it was one of the most overwhelming things I've ever experienced, because you don't understand what 3,000 friend requests are until you see what 3,000 friend requests are. And by the end of that weekend, I had hit the max. And I say all that to say, I believe it's only because those individuals appreciated how engaging we were. We weren't the only media outlet covering the Greater Hartford. It's the largest free jazz festival in the Northeast in America. So who am I? But it was because we were the only media outlet walking out into the crowd, talking to people, say, hey, follow me, hey, do this, hey, do that. I don't want to minimize people's fear by saying it's easy, because I don't believe in that. Whatever you feel is difficult for you, or some sort of adversity you need to shine through, I respect that, and I empathize with that. But you never know until you know. And don't be afraid of what generation you were born in. Oh, that's for the kid. No, it's not. No, it's not, because children are not the ones inventing these platforms. It's very sophisticated, and they most likely have a board of directors of very seasoned people. Nobody my age created the first computer. You know what I mean? It wasn't a young person who, depending on who you think is young, but it wasn't a teenager who created the first computer. It wasn't a teenager who sent somebody to the moon. Okay, so when you start understanding your value, you can accomplish anything. I, in turning 32 next week, I just got on social media 4 years ago. Okay, and I'm no social media guru or anything like that, but I know how to talk to people. Do you know how to work a room at a gala? Do you know how to work a room at a foundation dinner? Then you can master social media. It can be done. Now, full disclosure, you're probably going to have to hire people who are experts in SEO and experts at digital marketing, because that's a whole nother thing. I just want to inspire you to take the first step, but utilize people's tools. I know for a fact you have somebody working for you right now, an entry-level individual who, when they clock out at 5 o'clock, they are the master at social media. I'm talking everything: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Snapchat, whatever, all TikTok now. They're masters at it. And pay them for their time. Pay them for their time, because don't turn into one of those nonprofits who will identify and use people's skills and send an email saying, thank you for helping us. Nah, that fear I talked about in the beginning of this episode, it stems to this as well. You need to not only utilize your employees, your board members, because board members, it's an actual job, but you need to utilize your supporters. How can we engage with you more? Could you imagine if you saw a post like that? Thank you so much for our support. Happy holidays. Hey, please click this link, this Survey Monkey or whatever the case is, to tell us what you would like to see in a social media campaign from us. I'm telling you, your responses will be astronomical, because, like we said earlier, people love to be asked their opinion, but you have a responsibility to value that opinion. And if you don't, what's the point? Rebecca, I'm having a little trouble hearing.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
I was just saying we're running a little close to the end.
Okay.
And but I think I'd love to welcome you back for a part 2 of this, because what you have just done is given a tremendous amount of inspiration, but more so, you have defined what a lot of people struggle to define when you ask them, what does organic reach, what does organic engagement mean? Because you hear that all the time. Oh, we have an organic method or an organic system, but you have just very, very, very strongly articulated what that means. And from a position of have a little fear, it's okay, there's anxiety, get over the unknown, just do it, just go out and do it and do what feels right. I'd love it, Brendan, if you came back for a part 2.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm actually we'll have some data too. Thanksgiving, I'm gonna start my social media campaign, because we're taking our time with this one. So by the time I come back, we can actually have some real life examples, because I'm starting from zero again. I got rid of everything.
Wow.
I had, between all of my social media accounts, I had about 8,000 friends, followers, and subscribers. But when I took my break in May, I got rid of everything. So,
wow.
Wanted to start fresh. So by the time I come back, I'll actually have some real testimonials and real data, and we can share with your audience where I'm at from starting from zero. So I would love to come back.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Well, it's so great to have you on today. I hope you have a nice holiday next week. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm Rebecca Tuttle, and you're learning with Grant Right Now. Take care, Grant Writers.